Hi, so today I'm going to be discussing the first topic of Unit 5, which is all about the overviews of the layer of the Earth. But before that, let us take a look first on the objectives. In this lesson, you should be able to, first one, determine the layers of Earth based on chemical composition. Second one, describe the layers of Earth based on physical properties. Alright, let's proceed. So let us start here first. Earth is a dynamic planet, so that means Earth is constantly changing, which are composed of interacting subsystems, namely atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere. The internal structure of the Earth can be classified into compositional layers and mechanical layers. The compositional layers include the crust, mantle, and core. The layers are differentiated in terms of the material it is made of. Now, the layers of the Earth class are being categorized into two different forms. We have the compositional layer and the mechanical layer. So, for the compositional layer, ang gina-consider lang jud mainly diriya is purely the type of material that each of the layer is made of. Kaya nga, meron lang tatlong layers of Earth based on compositional layers kasi majority of the materials na atong makitaan between the crust and the lithosphere are just purely the same. Same also with the outer core and the inner core. Since they have the same type of elements and composition na itong makitaan dito so they categorize them as one. So that's on the side of compositional layers. Purely, ang gina-consider is the type of materials. Meanwhile, the layers based on the physical properties differentiate each layer based on physical state. These layers are lithosphere, asthenosphere, mesosphere, outer core, and inner core. Now, basically, class, ang gina-consider na mechanical layers is the type of physical state nga naa ato nga specific layer. Like for example, si crust is a solid form. Mantle has a semi-solid physical state. The inner core, it has purely solid form, while the outer core, liquid siya. So, mo na siya ang gina-consider ni mechanical layers. The type of physical state each of the layers of the Earth belongs. So, regardless of the basis of classification, the layers based on physical properties are aligned with the layers based on composition. Okay. So, under the compositional layers of the Earth, we have here crust. Crust is the outermost layer of the Earth. So, this is the part where all living things live. Its thickness range from 5 to 80 km and mainly composed of granites and basalts. Granites and basalts are igneous rocks. So these rocks are igneous, which are formed by cooling of magma, which is a mixture of molten or semi-molten rocks found beneath the Earth's surface. There are two types of crust, namely Continental Crust and Oceanic Crust. Continental Crust, they are mainly composed of granites, plate tectonics drives the formation of continental crust through the process of orogenesis or mountain building. So I've already mentioned, class, that continental crust are the type of crust we can find in the different continents of the world, just like African continents, Asian continents. Those are continental crust. Now, continental crust are formed through orogenesis or mountain building. The temperature in this layer or the temperature in the continental crust varies based on the temperature of the air at the surface to around 870 Celsius at innermost region. Meanwhile, the oceanic crust extends at about 5 to 10 km beneath the ocean floor. So kining kining oceanic crust, class, mo ni siyang type of crust na atong makitaan underneath the big bodies of oceans, just like the Pacific Ocean. Underneath the ocean floor or underneath of its ocean floor are big layers of oceanic crust. It consists mostly, or oceanic crust consists mostly of basalt that was constantly formed through tearing or divergence of tectonic plates and releasing of molten material along the ridge. So ang oceanic crust, class, they are formed when tectonic plates or katong plates nga kusog kayo siya mo move, mag-diverge or mag-separate ways, maglahi sila. So, since maglahi man sila or mag-separate directions man sila, naay ma-form nga gap in the center. Kaya wala naman sila nagdugtong, nag-separate naman sila. So, from that gap, the molten rocks or molten materials coming from the mantle will be released along the ridges. So that gives way to the formation of oceanic crust. Oceanic crust can also be destroyed through the process of subduction at the trench below the ocean. So later on, may balang to sa meaning aning subduction. Okay, so let us proceed with the mantle. The mantle, which is about 84% of Earth's volume, extends up to 2,900 km thick. It is composed of ultramafic materials, which are mainly made up of rich magnesium and iron. So, yung ultramafic materials, they are made up of magnesium and iron. And aside from that ultramafic materials, mantle also is made up of silicate materials that are composed of silicon and oxygen atoms. Moreover, the mantle is composed of other types of materials. So, meron din minerals, So, meron din palang mga minerals na makikita natin sa mantle. So, we have here magnesium oxide or perclase and iron oxide, which is the wustite. It also contains elements such as iron, calcium, aluminum, and carbon. The temperature in this layer ranges from 500 to 900 degrees Celsius in the upper portion, while up to 4,000 Celsius near the core. So that means the more you go deeper, the more the temperature of the earth increases. So the inner core has the highest temperature among the different layers of the earth. Convection currents are present in the mantle, which are products of rising and sinking of materials due to the differences in temperature and composition. Now, if you remember convection, conduction, and radiation, ang convection class mahitabo po na siya sa, if we consider convection into the different layers of the earth, mahitabo lang ang convection class in the mantle. It's because convection is a type of heat transfer wherein ang hot na materials magpaibabaw tapos ang mga cold na materials magpaubos. And that is when heat is being transferred from a hotter object towards a colder objects. Basta always remember, convection currents happens in mantle. Okay, now the next one is the core. The core is the innermost. Siya talaga yung pinaka-center ng layer of the earth, which is around 3,480 kilometers thick. Its composition is thought to be mainly 85% iron, 5% nickel, and other trace amounts of oxygen and sulfur. So, we can say that core is mainly made up of iron kasi nga considering the amount of percentage it is made of, 85% kasi yung iron. So therefore, mas malaki talaga or kasagaran sa mga components sa atong core are mainly made up of iron. Now we are done with the compositional layers of the earth. Let's proceed to the mechanical layers. The mechanical layers of the earth are lithosphere, asthenosphere, mesosphere, outer core, and inner core. So let's take a look first on this diagram to give us, the summary of what mechanical layers of earth is all about. So try to focus your attention on the crust. Wait, here. So by considering the type of physical state that the crust has a rigid type of physical properties. For lithosphere, meron din siyang rigid characteristic. For asthenosphere, it has plastic. So, not literally the plastic na atong kasagaran ginagamit sa balay or sa parts sa atong kitchen utensils, but plasticity of the asthenosphere is different in a way nga very sensitive kayo si asthenosphere because it is like constantly siya naga-move. Mo na siyang reason nga nung natay earthquake or sudden movements of the earth or just below the crust. That's because of the type of physical properties that asthenosphere have. Since plastic man siya or it has a like constantly moving siya nga type of materials na siya, so very sensitive siya sa mga sudden transfer of energy. Mao mo react dayon na siya. Now the next one is mesosphere. Mesosphere is just the mantle. Now mesosphere is or has semi-solid. Now, okay, so on this side pala class is the compositional layers of the earth, while this one is the mechanical layers of the earth. Now, mantle has silicate materials, and then compared with its mechanical layers, it has the characteristic of being semi-solid. The next one is the outer core. So outer core has a liquid physical state. For inner core, it has a rigid state, so that means it is made up of purely solid form, iron materials, nickel materials, and other traces of oxygen and sulfur. So that is the main difference between compositional layers of the earth and the mechanical layers of the earth. Okay. Lithosphere is the rigid outermost layer of the earth that is made up of crust and the uppermost layer of the mantle. So it is just below the crust and then uppermost layer of the mantle po siya. That is lithosphere. But of course, included na sa lithosphere ang crust and the uppermost layer of the mantle. So it extends from 70 to 150 km in depth. Next one is Asthenosphere. Underneath the lithosphere is the Asthenosphere. So nara siya diri a class mo. Just below the lithosphere is the Asthenosphere, which has a plastic state, or which has a plastic physical properties. Asthenosphere is just underneath the lithosphere, which is the plastic layer of the mantle. It lies between 70 to 660 km beneath Earth's surface. At this layer, plastic deformation occurs where materials can flow or change shape without breaking in response to stress. This allows the rigid lithosphere to move in response to the slab pull forces which drives plate tectonics. Convection currents occur in this layer due to its plasticity and temperature gradients. Phase changes of ultramafic rocks mark several different sublayers, including the transition zone, which marks increasing seismic velocities from 410 to 660 km. The asthenosphere is also the only layer of the mantle which contains melt, which is a primary composition of the magma. So asthenosphere class is totally unique in a way that it continuously deforms. Ma-deform siya or ma-change in shape siya without breaking. So mura good siya connected na good gyapon kay sa bali sensitive lang jud kayo siya, like dali ra siya kaayo maano sa mga responses or sa mga energy good coming from the core, from the inner core, tapos siya kay dili siya like walay diversion nga may tabo sa yaha, walay subduction, but instead mag-deform siya para dili gyapon sila maghiwalay good ingana. So that is the unique characteristic of being a plastic layer, which pertains to the characteristic of asthenosphere. Kaya nga kapag mag-move si asthenosphere, ang mahitabo pud sa lithosphere class, mo-react pud na siya kay naamang pud dito ang mga plate tectonics. So when this plate tectonics move, it triggers release of energy in a form of earthquake na ato nang masinati. So kaya nga merong 4.5 magnitude of earthquake, ganon. So these are just energy that are being released by the different layers of the earth. Mesosphere is the semi-solid layer below the asthenosphere. So ang mesosphere class mo lang yung good mantle. So it is a region with high temperature and pressure. that is located within the boundary of the mantle and the core. Thus, the term Mesosphere, which means in the middle of, the Mesosphere extends up to 2,900 km in terms of thickness. Okay. Next one is outer core. Outer core is a liquid innermost layer of the Earth. The temperature in this layer is very high, causing iron and nickel to melt. It is about 2,300 km thick. So outer core is the liquid innermost layer of the Earth. So that means the nickel and the iron here are in liquid form. Dili siya solid nga atong naandan, but instead it is in a liquid form, and that's because of a very high temperature in this layer. Next one is the inner core. Inner core is the innermost solid layer. So if outer core is a liquid layer, now inner core is a solid layer. The pressure in this region is enough for the material to stay solid. So you may wonder, ma'am, nganong dili man liquid si inner core if ang outer core is liquid? So dapat same lang tapod sila, no? But actually it's different, and the reason for that was even if taas kayo or very high ang temperature ni inner core, the pressure also that is present on this layer, on this inner core, is very tremendous, very high jud siya compared with the other layers of the Earth. That is why every materials na naa sa inner core, mahimo jud siyang solid layer, or it will become a solid form. Scientists have also been able to hypothesize what is underneath Earth through the study of seismic waves produced by earthquakes. Scientists utilize the information from seismograph to examine the Earth's interior. So, seismograph, it is a device that are usually used to measure seismic waves or movements of the crust. Andreja Mohorovic is a Croatian meteorologist and seismologist who was the first to discover the Earth's interior. In 1909, using a seismograph, he found a seismic discontinuity during a destructive earthquake in Kopa Valley in Croatia. He observed that certain seismic waves produce anomalies moving towards the Earth's center. He noted that one type of wave propagated at different rate as it moves from one media to another. He then hypothesized that different densities of rocks cause the waves to bend or retract, and that a boundary existed between the lighter crust and the denser mantle. This boundary was subsequently called as the Mohorovic discontinuity, or simply Moho discontinuity, which is located between the mantle and the crust. Ang main contribution lang ni ang main contribution jud ni Andreja Mohorovic is that he's able to hypothesize that when one waves moves from one medium to another, magvary ang ilahang reaction. Like for example, here we have here a P wave. So daghan magong klase nga waves class, especially sa kanang seismic waves. We have S waves, we have P waves. Now P waves they also have big amounts of energy. Now, when P waves penetrate the solid medium, makapass through na siya, bali paspas ang iyang pag-relay sa energy. Now, if the P wave moves to a liquid medium, bali mo hinay ang transfer of energy ng may tabo dira, and that's because there is a variation of medium. Waves are actually faster to transfer energy in a solid material. Pero when it comes to liquid material, na ay uban class na mga P waves ma-cancel out. That means dili sila maka-go through. Napoy uban na maka-go through sila, however, ma-minimize ang ilang energy, bali murag muhinay ang ilang energy while passing the liquid medium. And that exists. Moravisic then hypothesized that different densities of rocks, or yung pagkakaiba-iba ng densities ng mga rocks, are actually the cause for the waves to bend and retract. Kasi nga, merong mga rocks na lighter, meron ding mga rocks na denser. So that means it varies with their densities, tapos ang energy that is being released by the P waves, maglisod po na siya penetrate class, especially if ang type of rock is medyo dense siya, tapos in a liquefied or medyo molten siya or semi-solid siya. So, mo nang maglisod po siya penetrate. Now, a boundary that exists between or simply lang class nga, ang si Moravisic, siya lang ang nag-hypothesize that when there is a different densities between rocks, the waves are bend or refract. And then aside from that, he also said that there is a boundary that exists between the lighter crust and the denser mantle. Kaya na-create itong Moravisic discontinuity. Alright, so we are done with the first topic. So, you'll just go over with the key points kasi nga napaka-importante ng mga informations under key points because they are brief and concise. So, if there are misunderstanding that you've got along the way, you can just proceed on the key points on each of the topics because they're exact and concise, and also they are shortened. So, I'll be recording the next topic, so this will be the end for my discussion on the first topic. Thank you.